I found out my sister got $40 million, a mansion, and a Tesla. The same day I realized my last birthday gift from my parents was $200. She posted the keys on social media first. Marble countertops, waterfall shower, 3-car garage with a red Model X gleaming under recessed lighting. The caption read, "So blessed. Mom and Dad, I love you forever." I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even invited to the celebration dinner, though I heard about it later from a cousin who thought I'd been too busy to attend. Too busy. As if I'd chosen to miss the coronation of the golden child. Sister posts mansion keys and Tesla on social media while I get nothing. When I did see my parents a few days later, they toasted her future over brunch. They wouldn't make eye contact with me. My mother refilled my sister's mimosa twice. My father asked her about interest rates and property taxes like she was his retirement plan. I sat there with toast I couldn't swallow, remembering that $200 check last November. The memo line had been blank. For years I told myself I was being sensitive, that I was the problem, that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, asked for less, maybe they'd see me the way they saw her. Reframe. I thought I was the problem, but the inequality was designed. I left that brunch early. I told them I had work. I didn't. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried so hard I fogged the windows. That's when the stranger appeared. She knocked on the glass. Mid-50s, navy blazer, eyes that looked like they hadn't slept well in months. I cracked the window. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded, wiping my face. She hesitated. Then she pulled an envelope from her purse. Manila, thick, no label. Stranger in parking lot said, "They should have told you years ago." "Who are you?" I managed. She shook her head. "Someone who couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserved better than this." She handed me the envelope through the gap, glanced back toward the restaurant, and walked away before I could say another word. I should have chased her. I should have demanded answers. But my hands were already shaking as I turned the envelope over. Inside was proof my entire life had been a lie. I didn't open it right away. I drove home first, double-locked the door, and sat at my kitchen table under the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. The envelope sat in front of me like a bomb. When I finally tore it open, the first page trembled in my hands. Bank routing numbers I recognized. Account names I'd seen before on old statements my parents kept in a file cabinet when I was younger. Transaction dates. Amounts that made my stomach drop. The handwritten note clipped to the front was short, unsigned. "You deserve to know." I couldn't stay silent. Whoever she was, the stranger knew my financial history better than I did. I flipped through the pages. Transfers, reallocations, wire instructions. All of it printed on letterhead from a law office I didn't recognize, but one document had a footer with my parents' names listed as clients. The dates lined up with periods I remembered. The summer before college, when my parents said my fund had underperformed. The winter after graduation, when they claimed the market had been rough, and there was nothing left to help with my student loans. I'd believed them. Why wouldn't I? Receipt. These were bank records. Routing numbers. Transaction dates. A handwritten note from someone who had access to everything. But this wasn't just a bank statement. These were internal memos, transfer authorizations, evidence that someone had deliberately moved money, and moved it in a way that appeared calculated. One page had 2 columns. On the left, an account number I'd seen on my college fund statements. On the right, a different account number I didn't recognize. Between them, arrows in blue ink. And beneath it all, a printed email excerpt. The subject line read, "Per your request, reallocation complete." Reframe. The stranger knew my financial history better than I did because she had been on the inside. My chest tightened. If my parents discovered I had this, what would they do? Would they lie again? Threaten me? Pretend it was a misunderstanding? I spread the documents across the table and took photos of every page with my phone. Then I locked the originals in a fireproof box under my bed. I didn't sleep that night. because on the last page, beneath a scanned signature I recognized as my father's, I saw something that made the air leave my lungs. Then I saw my name, crossed out in red ink. I decided to stop waiting for answers and start looking for them myself. At first, I didn't know where to dig, but I remembered that years ago I'd had online access to a joint account my grandmother set up when I was younger. I hadn't logged in since college. I assumed it had been closed. I tried the old URL anyway. The website had been updated, but the login portal was still live. I reset my password, and to my shock, the system let me in. The account had been zeroed out and marked inactive, but the transaction history was still available in archived PDFs. I searched until 3 a.m., eyes burning, heart racing. And there it was, an account number that matched the one in the envelope. My name listed as the original beneficiary. Deposits made regularly over years. Modest amounts from my grandmother, and then, after she passed, a massive lump sum transfer that I believed appeared to come from her estate. Every deposit in my name was zeroed out within weeks. The withdrawals were all authorized by the same two people, my parents. I cross-referenced the dates with my own memories. The last major withdrawal happened the spring I graduated college. The same spring my parents bought my sister her first car. The same spring they told me I'd need to figure out my own rent because they were stretched thin. Receipt. I had screenshots now. Digital evidence of systematic withdrawals from an account that had been in my name. I printed everything. I backed it up to 3 separate cloud accounts. I even emailed copies to an address I created just for this, in case they tried to make me delete it. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Money came in under my name. Money went out under their control. And I had never been told any of it existed. Reframe. This wasn't neglect or favoritism. This was something far more deliberate. By dawn, I was shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't pretend anymore. The money hadn't been lost or mismanaged. The money had been mine all along. I needed to know where it had started. The documents in the envelope referenced an estate transfer, but they didn't name the source. I racked my memory, trying to piece together what my grandmother had said to me before she passed. Her voice echoed in my mind. I made sure you'd be taken care of. I was a teenager then. I thought she meant emotionally, that she'd talk to my parents about being kinder maybe. I didn't realize she meant financially, but if she'd left me something, where was the proof? I started with the county records office. I claimed I needed a copy of her estate documents for genealogy purposes. The clerk was kind enough to walk me through the database. The date everything shifted, right after she passed. When the file came back, my hands went numb. My grandmother's will had included a trust. The trust named 2 beneficiaries, me and my sister, equal shares. The estate had been valued in the mid-8 figures, split down the middle. There were instructions. The funds were to be managed by our parents until we each turned 25, then transferred into our individual control. I was 28 now. I should have received my half years ago. Receipt. I held a copy of the original trust documents. My name was printed clearly as a beneficiary. So was my sister's. But clipped behind the will was a second document. An amendment, filed with the court exactly 3 years ago. The amendment reallocated my portion of the trust to my sister, citing mutual family agreement and the best interest of the beneficiaries. I had never signed anything. I had never agreed. I made a second phone call to the county records office and asked who had filed the amendment. The clerk gave me a name I didn't recognize. A lawyer, someone from a firm 2 states over. That lawyer had been hired by my parents. Reframe. My parents didn't earn the $40 million they gave my sister. It had been inherited, and I had been the intended recipient of half of it. The timeline was damning. The amendment was filed the year after I'd asked my parents for help with a down payment on a modest condo. They'd told me they couldn't. That same year, my sister got a gift to start her business. Now I understood. They hadn't just refused to help me. They had stolen what was mine and given it to her instead. And it had all been moved exactly 3 years ago. I knew I needed more than documents. I needed intent, so I did something I'm not proud of, but I'd do it again. I used my sister's laptop. She'd left it at my apartment weeks earlier after a visit. I hadn't returned it yet. We weren't close, but we weren't estranged either. Or so I thought. I guessed her password on the second try. It was our childhood dog's name. Her email was logged in automatically. I searched my own name, then my grandmother's, then the name of the law firm. What I found made my blood stop. An email thread, short, clinical, dated from exactly 3 years ago. The lawyer's signature on the redirect authorization. The subject line read, Reallocation Confidential. The lawyer had sent a memo to my parents summarizing the steps to transfer my portion of the inheritance to my sister. He outlined how to file the amendment quietly, how to avoid notifying me, and how to ensure the records reflected family consensus. My father had replied first. Proceed. She won't ask questions. My mother's reply came an hour later. Email subject line, Reallocation Confidential. My mother had typed, She'll never need to know. Receipt. This was the smoking gun. An email chain between my parents and their attorney, orchestrating the deliberate transfer of my inheritance. Proof of intent. Proof of conspiracy. I read it 4 times. I took photos. I forwarded the thread to my secret backup email and deleted the sent message from my sister's account. Then I closed the laptop and sat in silence. Reframe, this wasn't favoritism. This wasn't even neglect. It was premeditated theft. They had discussed me like I was a line item, a problem to be managed, an inconvenience to be erased. For years I had blamed myself for not being enough. But I was never supposed to be enough. I was supposed to disappear. The statute of limitations on financial fraud varies by state. I didn't know if I even had a case. I didn't know if a lawyer would take me seriously. But I knew one thing. They had taken everything from me, and they'd done it in writing. My mother had typed, She'll never need to know. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the parking lot. Who was she? Why did she care? And how did she get those documents? 2 days after I found the email thread, I got a text from an unknown number. If you want to talk, I'll be at the coffee shop on 11th tomorrow at noon. Alone. I should have been scared. I should have blocked the number. But I went. She was already seated when I arrived. Same navy blazer, same tired eyes. She had a cup of black coffee and a folder on the table in front of her. Her hands shook as she showed me her old employee badge. I was a paralegal, she said quietly. I worked for the firm your parents hired. I'm the one who filed the paperwork. The stranger's identity, the loop that had haunted me since the parking lot, was finally closing. She had been the attorney's assistant. She had filed the amendment herself. She had prepared the transfer authorizations, printed the memos, and watched my parents sign documents that erased me from my own inheritance. Why now? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. I left the firm a year ago. I couldn't do it anymore. The things I saw. The families destroyed for money. I told myself it wasn't my job to judge. But then I saw your sister's post. The mansion. The Tesla. And I remembered your file. I remembered you. Her conscience broke when she saw my sister's social media posts. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were copies of her old employment records, her NDA, and a business card from the firm with her name on it. Receipt. Proof that she had been there. Proof that she had access. Proof that she was credible. I can't testify, she said. I signed an agreement. But you deserve to know what they did. And you deserve to fight. Reframe. This wasn't a random act of kindness. This was someone who had walked away from hush money and a career because staying silent had become unbearable. I asked her if my sister knew. She hesitated. I don't know, but your parents did. Every step of the way. I thanked her. I wanted to say more, but she left before I could. I sat there alone, staring at the folder, knowing what I had to do next. Now I had to decide who to tell first. I chose my parents. I drove to their house unannounced on a Sunday morning. I brought a printed copy of the email thread, the trust documents, and the amendment. When my father opened the door, I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked past him into the dining room and laid everything on the table. My father's face drained of color when I laid the emails on the table. My mother came in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. She froze when she saw the papers. "What is this?" she asked. "You tell me," I said. I watched them scan the pages. I watched my father's jaw tighten. I watched my mother's hand go to her throat. "This is private," my father said finally. "It's theft," I replied. They denied it at first. Said I was misunderstanding. Said the lawyer had advised them to consolidate assets for tax purposes. Said it was complicated and I wouldn't understand. Then my mother tried a different angle. "We did what we thought was best for the family." Best for the family. As if I wasn't part of it, I asked them point blank, "Did you take my inheritance and give it to her?" Silence. That was all the answer I needed. My father's face hardened. "You need to leave. I need the truth. You need to leave or we'll call the police." Threat. They weren't going to admit it. They were going to deny, minimize, and then eliminate me from the narrative altogether. I left, but not before taking photos of their reactions. Not before recording the last 60 seconds on my phone. That night, my sister texted me, "Why are you doing this to us?" To us. As if she were the victim. I didn't reply. Receipt, I had her text. I had their refusal to answer. I had everything I needed to prove they knew exactly what they'd done. Cost. My family didn't fracture that day. It detonated. Their lawyer called me 48 hours later. The lawyer was polite, professional. He told me my parents were disappointed by my allegations and wanted to resolve this matter privately. He offered me a settlement. The number on the settlement letter wasn't even close to half. It was a fraction, enough to make me go away, not enough to make me whole. He explained that contesting the trust amendment would be costly, lengthy, and unlikely to succeed given the time that had passed. He suggested I consider the emotional toll. He used words like family harmony and moving forward. What I said no to and why. I said no because accepting felt like agreeing I'd never mattered. But then he revised the offer. Added a little more, enough to clear my debt, buy a small place, start over. I thought about justice. I thought about principle. I thought about spending years in court, draining my energy and savings to fight people who would never love me the way I needed. Receipt. The settlement letter was real. Signed by their attorney. Routed through a mediator, legal and binding. Reframe. Winning was never about matching the $40 million. It was about being seen. About forcing them to acknowledge, even in private, that they had taken something that was mine. I told the lawyer I'd sign on one condition. He asked what it was. I said I'd tell him after I decided. Freedom versus fairness. I stood at that crossroads for days. In the end, I signed. Not because I forgave them. Not because the number was fair, but because I needed to be free more than I needed to be right. I signed, but not before adding one condition. The condition was simple. No contact. None. Not until they acknowledged in writing what they had done and why. The lawyer agreed. My parents never responded. I haven't heard from them since. That $200 birthday check sits in a drawer in my desk. I haven't cashed it. I keep it as a reminder of what they thought I was worth. My sister reached out once, months later. She said she wanted to fix things. But when I asked her if she knew where her mansion money had come from, she stopped replying. The boundary I set. No contact until they acknowledge the truth in writing. That was the condition I added to the settlement. And it's the line I'll never cross. Some people think I should have fought harder. Taken them to court. Made it public. But I've learned something. You can't win a rigged game by playing it. You win by walking away. Cost, I am grieving. Not the parents I lost, but the parents I never had. The ones who would have protected me. The ones who would have chosen me. I've started building a new life. Smaller, quieter, mine. I've found people who show up. Friends who don't keep score. A therapist who reminds me that being erased doesn't mean I was never there. Reframe, family isn't blood. Family is who shows up with the truth, even when it costs them something. I think about the woman in the parking lot sometimes. The paralegal who walked away from her career because staying silent broke her. I never got her name. But she gave me something my parents never did. She gave me the truth. I don't know what my parents tell people about me now. I don't know if my sister feels guilty or if she ever thinks about me at all. But I know this, I am not less than. I was just born into the wrong story, so I'm writing a new one. And I've never looked back. If you've ever been erased from your own family, comment "seen." You deserve better.